Hello everyone and welcome back to another review for Shadowrun Returns, a tactical cRPG with a cyberpunk themed setting that I actually beat many months ago for the PC via the Steam platform, but didn't get the time to make a video for it, and here I am now. Better late than never, as they say, and I'm actually happy to deliver this video because I had a great time with this game, and this good experience will definitely prompt me to check out the other two games in the cRPG Shadowrun PC trilogy. Now, the origins of this franchise is actually something that caught my attention and is very interesting. The Shadowrun series was born on the late 80s from a tabletop RPG game, I believe, which later gave way to the video game releases, including games for the Sega Genesis, the Super Nintendo, which is perhaps the best received game version before this PC release, and even an online shooter Xbox 360 game, which was pretty bland and universally hated by fans of the series, since it didn't really have anything to do with the tactical and strategy nature of the Shadowrun universe. Now, the provenance for this particular PC game, Shadowrun Returns, dates all the way back to the early 2010s, with the game being actually one of the rare early Kickstarter success stories of that time. I think this game aimed originally for like a 400,000 funding goal, I believe, but it ended up exceeding that amount, making close to like $2 million. So the best part, and I guess the rare part about this, is that the game not only met its promises, but it also met its very aggressive release date, which is definitely something very rare in the gaming crowdfunding universe, if you will. Now, the game released in 2013, and it actually paved the way for the resurrection of the cRPG genre that once reigned in the PC world in the late 90s and early 2000s. However, I feel like the general consensus is that these recognition typically is unjustly given to Obsidian's Pillars of Eternity, which is in no doubt a more popular and well-received game. But it's important to know that Pillars of Eternity came out in, I believe, 2015, as opposed to Shadowrun Returns being released 2 years earlier in 2013. It is important to note also that the creator of the 1989 tabletop game, Jordan Weisman, had direct involvement and led the funding efforts for the modern PC Shadowrun games, which is something pretty cool. Now, with those background tidbits out of the way, let's talk about the story of the game, I guess. And as always, I will avoid major spoilers in the event you guys haven't played this game yet. So, yeah, in my opinion, there are two important aspects of the story that need to be mentioned. Number one, the overall story and lore of the Shadowrun universe, and then number two, the story within this Shadowrun Returns game. Without going too much into the lore of the series, the overall story basically explains the existence of magic and non-human races like trolls and elves in our world through an event that occurred in the early 2010s called the Awakening, which is basically something pretty cool in the sense that it tries to provide an explanation for these things and allows for the coexisting of these different types of races in our world, blending fantasy and real-world settings, which breaks away from the typical you can only have elves and trolls in a medieval fantasy setting type of situations. So as far as the story, that pertains to the game itself. It takes place, the story of this game in particular, it takes place in I believe in the 2050s, and you are free to create your own character who is a Shadowrunner, who basically are mercenaries on hire that work for mega corporations. You see, in the Shadowrun universe, global corporations are the ones running the world, having more power even than countries or nations themselves. So anyways, you're a Shadowrunner and you receive a pre-recorded message from an old colleague of yours called Sam Watts, claiming that by the time you watch the message, he will be already dead, or better explained, this was triggered by a dead man's switch, as the game calls it, but that if you manage to find out who the killer was and bring him to justice, you will be compensated with a huge amount of money. So it is right there and then that your journey starts to find out who perpetrated the crime and bring justice to your old colleague. So, of course, the story gets a little bit more complicated along the way as you meet new characters and gather more leads. The story has some interesting twists and turns all the way to the ending, ranging from themes like corruption in the system to eerie cults. However, I have to say, without spoiling anything, that the way the ending unfolded left me, personally disappointed, especially with the decisions I made along my journey. But that's I don't want to get into too many spoilers. So let's go and talk about graphics. So in terms of graphics, the game features a classic cRPG isometric view with what it looks like hand-drawn background images that come to life thanks to the great cyberpunk setting and atmosphere of the different levels. This is a game where I feel like presentation and atmosphere go a long way to convey the dark, modern, cyberpunk vibes that correspond to a murder mystery plot like this one. Along with that, the character models are good, and the overall art direction is great, giving the game and its characters a good personality. Now, being an older game, you're not going to need a powerful rig to run this game, which is something good. In case you guys don't have a powerful PC, this will work just fine. As far as the sound, the game unfortunately does not feature voice acting, which is somewhat expected due to the crowdfunding nature of the game. The writing itself is good, so it's a shame that no voices are in the game. The soundtrack is actually good and goes well along with the cyberpunk setting and theme of the game. So yeah, pretty solid sound overall, or soundtrack overall in this game. Now, as far as gameplay, Shadowrun is a tactical turn-based cRPG, as I mentioned before. You have action points in your combat, so you have to be able to balance your movement and attack actions carefully, as well as other actions such as healing and of course the use of special skills, which vary depending on the character and the class you are playing with. The levels themselves are fairly linear, although there are some clever varying paths that you can apply within the levels based on your decisions. For example, if you have high charisma points or skills, you might be able to influence a guard at the door of a building to let you into the building, as opposed to sneaking your way into the building via a back alley or something to that extent. And speaking of decisions, the game does give you branching options via dialogue options, but ultimately they do not make a difference in how the story unfolds ultimately and the final outcome. This dialogue's choices, they might help you speed your way through certain parts of the game, or perhaps give you access to things like side missions, but unfortunately that's the extent of the dialogue decisions in the game. Developing your character is fun, and it does make a difference in terms of the combat system. I decided to go with the shaman class, with differences itself from mages by summoning spirits instead of using straight magic, for example. One cool thing about the shaman class was that I was not very aware until I was deep in the game that the shaman class by itself has high charisma. That's one of the innate, skills of that class. So you are able to influence the decisions of NPCs in the game, which is something I typically enjoy doing in Western RPGs or cRPGs. So that ended up working pretty well for me as far as choosing the shaman class. Classes have their disadvantages as well. For example, as a shaman, I was not able to make use of cybernetic parts to enhance my body for combat. I believe this is something deprived in the game from both mages and shamans. So similarly, other classes have their pros and cons and offer other cool features that add replay value, such as hackers being able to use drones and hack machines, and other gameplay features that I was not able to experience as a shaman user. But I do have to say that the classes feel like they, unfortunately, they seem to lack a balance at certain points. For example, the game allows you to hire other Shadowrunners in later missions. I believe you can have up to 3 other party members. And there was one mercenary that I always hired, which was a female troll. I forgot her name, but she had a rifle and a shotgun as weapons. So, troll characters also have a super high health points, so she was extremely OP for me, in the sense that I was able to use her long range attacks thanks to the rifle weapon, but also use her very well in close combat encounters as a tank, and for close proximity, powerful shotgun shots from the secondary weapon. So that pretty much wiped out most enemies rather quickly. So this to me seemed a little bit unbalanced, and they should have, for example, eliminated the ability to carry weapons as a troll, for example, to apply more balance in the game. Considering trolls are, like tank characters, so maybe they should have left them to be like melee only, use their hands only or something like that. So that was something, a bit of a, I guess, unbalanced thing within the game. Now, thanks to the hiring of Shadowrunners features in certain levels, I was able to experiment with other classes since you have control of their turns. So that was pretty cool. The leveling system is interesting and has basically a main stat that needs to be leveled before specific skills can be acquired, which provides careful thought on your behalf when spending the karma points you earn through experience, within the game. Overall, it took me around 20 hours to beat the game, which is more than the average. I think most people beat this game comfortably, around 15 or maybe less hours. But I did explore every nook and cranny and completed every side quest mission that was available to me in the game, which to me was important because you get money when you beat the side missions. And you can use the money to buy newer weapons and armor as you progress through the game. Now, granted, this game is not very hard, but part of that might have to do with the fact that I had enough money to purchase all the top weapons and top armors within the game. Despite being a short and fairly linear game, Shadowrun Returns has very good world building and really surrounds the player with enough detail about the universe to get immersed. Overall, this was a great game, and it's a great starting point for newcomers to the cRPG genre, not only because of its short and straightforward nature, but also because of its pricing. You can get the game for fairly cheap during Steam sales, and even more so when you bundle it up with the other 2 games in the trilogy. So overall, I was very pleased with this game, and I highly recommend it to fans of tactical RPGs. And hopefully I will get to play and cover the other 2 games in the trilogy in the near future. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching this video, and I will see you all later. Take it easy.